He wasn't asking for much, just a little kindness after another back-breaking shift. To his boss, it seemed like a small request. But what that CEO discovered when he decided to follow his black employee home revealed a reality far heavier than any workload. Behind closed doors was a truth that spoke louder than words, a truth millions quietly endure but few dare to confront. What could drive a man to work himself past exhaustion and still come home to nothing? Marcus was the kind of man everyone at work recognized, but few truly knew. He showed up early, stayed late, and rarely complained. Day after day, he clocked in for double shifts, pushing his body to the limit just to keep food on the table for his family. On the surface, he was just another employee in the background, the kind people passed by without noticing. But behind his quiet determination was a weight he carried alone. Bills piled higher than his paychecks, and the demands of life left him with little room to breathe. Still, Marcus never asked for handouts. He believed in hard work, even when it seemed the world gave him little in return. So when he timidly approached his CEO one evening, asking if he could take home some leftovers from the company cafeteria, it wasn't out of greed, it was survival. To the CEO, it seemed like a strange request, one that planted a seed of curiosity. Why would a man who works so tirelessly need to ask for something so small? That single question lingered in the CEO's mind, pulling him into a decision that would uncover far more than he ever expected. The next morning should have been like any other. Marcus showing up early, shoulders heavy from exhaustion, ready to push through another double shift. But something was different. He could feel it before he even clocked in. The CEO's eyes lingered longer than usual, watching him with a curiosity Marcus couldn't quite place. He thought nothing of it at first. He had no idea his quiet request for leftovers had sparked something far larger. What Marcus didn't know was that the CEO had made a decision. That evening, instead of heading home after work, the boss stayed behind. He watched Marcus drag his weary body out of the building, lunchbox in hand, the faint weight of leftovers packed inside. Then, from a careful distance, he followed. The city streets blurred under dim lights as Marcus trudged along, too tired to notice the car trailing behind. Every step told a story of sacrifice, feet dragging, shoulders slumped, eyes sunken with fatigue. But the deeper the CEO followed, the more unsettling it became. This wasn't the path of someone living comfortably. Marcus turned down streets most executives never dare to cross. Streets marked by flickering lamps, shuttered stores, and silence that felt heavy with neglect. The CEO's curiosity turned to unease. Why was a man who gave so much at work walking into a neighborhood that seemed forgotten? Why did the smell of desperation hang in the air stronger with each block? And then, there it was, Marcus's home. A small, crumbling apartment building tucked between boarded-up shops. The CEO sat frozen in his car, watching as Marcus slipped quietly inside. A light flickered on, dim and weak, barely illuminating the space within. What the CEO saw through that window stopped him cold. Children, 3 of them, sat crowded around a single table. Their eyes lit up the second Marcus opened his lunchbox, pulling out the scraps he'd saved from work. Leftover pasta, a half-eaten sandwich, a piece of fruit that might have otherwise been thrown away. The kids ate hungrily, as though it were a feast. Marcus smiled faintly, but there was sadness in his eyes. This wasn't abundance. This was survival. The CEO's chest tightened. He had walked past Marcus 1,000 times in the halls, seeing only an employee, never the man. Now, through that window, he saw what double shifts really meant. It wasn't just about long hours. It was about keeping the lights on, feeding mouths that depended on him, enduring a system that left him with scraps while others feasted. But before the CEO could process it, something else caught his eye. A notice taped to the wall near the door, bright red, unmistakable. An eviction warning. The weight of it all pressed in. The exhaustion, the hunger, the quiet desperation. And in that moment, the CEO realized this wasn't just Marcus's story. It was a reality lived by countless others, hidden in plain sight. The question now wasn't whether he had seen enough. It was what he would do with the truth staring him in the face. Marcus thought his long hours and sacrifice were enough to hold his fragile world together. But the truth hit harder than any exhaustion ever could. Days after the CEO's quiet discovery, Marcus came home to something he had feared but tried desperately to ignore. The eviction notice was no longer just taped to the wall. It was final. His key no longer fit the lock. His children stood beside him on the cold pavement, clutching their school bags, eyes wide with confusion and fear. Neighbors passed by, some with pity, others with judgment, as if poverty were a crime. The weight of their stares pressed down, heavier than the boxes Marcus carried. His daughter tugged at his sleeve, asking when they could go inside, and he had no answer. For the first time, the man who had always held his family together felt utterly powerless. And then, the CEO arrived. He had followed Marcus again that night, drawn back by a gnawing sense of responsibility he couldn't shake. From the car, he witnessed the scene. The locked door, the crying children, the man who had given everything and was left with nothing. The silence was unbearable, broken only by the sobs of a boy too young to understand why they no longer had a home. It was a moment that stripped away all titles, wealth, and distance. Here stood a man who had built a company on the labor of people like Marcus, and now he was face to face with the reality of that imbalance. Marcus didn't see him yet. He was too busy gathering his children, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. And the CEO realized he had a choice: turn away and pretend he hadn't seen, or step forward and change everything. The CEO finally stepped out of his car that night, no longer able to hide behind tinted windows and quiet curiosity. He offered help, money, resources, a roof over their heads. And while Marcus accepted out of necessity, the moment wasn't about charity. It was about truth being laid bare. For years, Marcus had carried the weight of a system designed to keep him struggling. A system where his hard work was never enough simply because of the color of his skin and the circumstances he was born into. For the CEO, it was a revelation. He realized that the empire he had built thrived on people like Marcus. People who gave everything and received almost nothing. The injustice wasn't just in the eviction notice or the empty fridge. It was in the quiet acceptance that this was normal, that countless families like Marcus's lived this reality every single day. Marcus's story is not unique. His exhaustion, his desperation, his children waiting for scraps of food. These are not isolated struggles. They are reflections of a larger, painful truth, that racial and economic inequality are deeply woven into our society, and too often, they remain invisible until someone is forced to look. The question is, how many more families must stand on the pavement, locked out of their homes, before change becomes more than a promise? How many more fathers must break under the weight of a system stacked against them? Marcus's fight is still happening, in every city, in every forgotten neighborhood. The only difference is whether we choose to look away or finally see. So, what would you have done if you were in the CEO's shoes that night? Disclaimer: the stories on this channel are works of fiction created purely for entertainment. While they may highlight themes of social issues, they're not based on real people, events, or organizations. Any similarities are purely coincidental. Our goal is to spark reflection and inspire positive change, rooted in the belief that everyone deserves equality, fairness, and dignity. These stories carry no political or religious agenda.